Now it's our pleasure to welcome Dylan Richardson, who is actually a new member of the Capitol Beltway Postcard Club. I want to introduce a little bit about him. So he's a park interpreter ranger at the National Park Service. He works normally at the Dickey Ridge, which is the north of Shenandoah, but most of the time he's also on the central part. The writer, in the winter, he was in Alabama in another park. He started collecting postcards about 2 years ago, just by chance, because he always loved antiques and casually discovered postcards from Shenandoah National Park. He likes postcards with a story, including from his own hometown, as we just saw. He's also a 3D photographer. That's a whole discussion for another time.
So, welcome, folks. As mentioned, I am actually currently not employed for another 2 or 3 days. I am between seasons. I spent the winter in Alabama at Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site. I will be beginning Sunday for Shenandoah National Park of the Dickey Ridge. This is a program that I put together last year, so know that this is really made for a general audience, somebody that doesn't really know a lot about postcards. Y'all may know already a lot of this information. Some of it may be review, as is titled, Postcards from the Past, Shenandoah, Then and Now. So you're going to see some historic cards from Shenandoah, more than the average person wants to know. So let's get started. Why postcards? Why am I a park ranger who talks about postcards? Well, for me, it started with this card. This is of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and this is the exact postcard that I ran into in an antique store and said, man, is that Shenandoah National Park? Oh, no, it's not. But it got me thinking that, man, surely Shenandoah has a lot of antique postcards that I could go and maybe recreate some of these photos, and perhaps some photos couldn't be recreated because things had changed. We're going to go through this. I'm going to talk about what exactly is a postcard, how do we define them, how they are made and how they come to be, then how they can be used as historic tools that we can mostly trust. So what is a postcard? For many people, they will just associate it with something like this that might be sent through the mail with a message on the back. That's pretty well right. The history goes back a little further, starting with postal cards. Now, postal cards, we'll spend a lot of time on it, but if you could imagine, 1869, Austria-Hungary, you're going around town and you're visiting Budapest. You need to just send a letter back to your folks saying, made it here safely and I'm good on money, or perhaps I made it here and was robbed. Please send me money. The postcard was a cheap way that you could go to the post office, say, hi, give me a piece of paper, please. And they would do this, fill it out, and they would send it on. It was an inexpensive form of communication, just for messages. Picture postcards are what we're more familiar with and we're going to talk about tonight. The first known one is actually a funny historical thing that it predates postal cards, but penny pennants by Theodore Hook, done in 1840, happens to be the same year that the penny black stamp was printed. And turns out, if you paint something on a piece of cardstock, put a stamp on it, they'll send it through the mail. I do like to enjoy, just to note this little tidbit, Theodore Hook. He was a famous prankster of the era. Theodore Hook is responsible for the Berners Street hoax, which, if you were born in like 1805, you would know about this. This was big all over Europe. There were plays in many languages made of this, and essentially all it was this guy said, I bet you I can make that address the most talked about address in all of London. And his buddy's like, sure you can. And what he does is he sends letters out to everybody that has business in town and says, come on by this address at this day at this time, we will get you. I'm interested in doing business. So you had at the same time trying to walk in the door, casket salesman, chimney sweeps, the mayor of London showed up. It was a whole thing. Y'all might not find that very funny, but in the 1840s, this was like peak comedy. Picture postcards though. They really take off after the 1889 World's Fair. This is one of the very first ones sent there. This is where postal carditis begins. And this is something that I assume many of y'all in the audience, given the particular audience tonight, may be afflicted with. So let's look at the symptoms. By 1900, postal carditis is hitting the United States. Postal carditis affects the heart, paralyzes the reasoning faculties, and abnormally increases the nerve. It had its origin in Germany 20 years ago. Sporadic cases of it were observed in the United States, and the year 1900 saw the malady rapidly spread from one center of infection to another. Symptoms might include mailing cards to oneself, demanding that one's hometown have custom postcard sets, as in Tenafly, New Jersey. The inmates of that New Jersey suburb awake to the fact that they have no postal cards with which to set forth the glories of their native place. They see the local stationer about it and prevail upon him to have some made. The manufacturer receives the order with glee and is willing to make the first shipment at a loss, for he knows when the pest takes hold of a community, it cannot be stayed. This is in my collection. This is a Tenafly, New Jersey postcard. If you don't know where that is, it's actually just across from New York City. Never been, but it seems like a really neat place. They have some cliffs that you can look out over the city. They continue, unless such manifestations are checked, millions of persons of now normal lives and their approachable habits will become victims to fatty degeneration of the brain. And this is to note that this is not news to many of y'all. Postcards were an incredible. They took off like wildfire. There's stories of fights breaking out in Ocean City when postcard salesmen ran out of postcard. This really was. Postcards helped to dig the United States Postal Service out of debt around the turn of the century. It's really something that it got done. And I love, this is from Puck. Many of you may have seen this image before, but if you haven't, take a look. I'm going to go to the post, to the North Pole. We're going to go to Robinson Crusoe. This poor fellow down here, if you can't read it, at the bottom it says, "New arrival. Pardon me, sir. Where is the writing room? I wish to send up some souvenir postcards." You know, he's just arrived in hell, but he's ready to, all right, let's send some postcards up. Now, because of this craze, you get postcards made for basically everything and anything and everything. You get postcards for hometowns, churches, businesses, cards reminding you to write cards, schools, politicians, birds, cars, whatever this is. Big boats, little boats, holidays, post offices, celebrities, rivers, diners, miners, bridges, britches, trains, planes, and parks. Which finally gets us on to the point of tonight, Shenandoah National Park. This is kind of a lovely postcard looking at one of the highest elevation within Shenandoah National Park, Hawksbill. It's a pretty easy hike. If you want to learn more about that, certainly ask me later. I realize that some of this stuff hasn't changed that much, like right here, Spotswood Monument. I know where that is. That's the old entrance station. Wow, at Swift Run. It hasn't changed too much, except if you look closely, those letters are backwards. I flipped the image. Actually, they moved them from one side of the road to the other. That's a minor change, right? That's one of those little things that you would never know or care about and really doesn't matter too much, but it is something preserved in postcards. Now, when I give this program, I was giving it up at Skyland being a historic resort within Shenandoah. And I would ask folks if they were familiar with this. This is close to where I would have been inviting people. It hasn't changed all that much. Now, given that y'all are all on mute, I am going to assume that no one has seen this building before. Perhaps some of you do recognize it. This is the old Panorama building. This sat at Thornton Gap It had a tea room and a gift shop and was a visitor contact station that could be accessed from outside the park technically without having to pay the entrance fee. You could come in, enjoy the tea room with a view, and continue on with your journeys if you wished. Before this, though, I doubt any of y'all would remember this building. This was tore down by the 1960s, like early 1960s, and was in operation since around 1924. I don't know exact year for this building's construction, but this is Skyline Drive coming through here. This is 211, the road going up and over the park coming through there. There's a service station. This is another one of those pictures that got my park ranger senses tingling. Like, man, what is this? There's Skyline. There's 211. What in the world is that? Asking some ranger friends, we came up with, I went looking. Turns out that gravel road is this gravel road here, going up to the old Panorama Hotel. Now, the Panorama Hotel, you will hear and get a lot of stories told of Skyland and George Freeman Pollock, all of these crazy stories from there. They had something very similarly big, right? These guys, it opens in 1924. They had about 350 acres. They owned what is now Mary's Rock. They had horseback riding, rooms for up to like 150 guests. This was really a pretty big deal, and nobody's hardly ever heard of it. I went tromping out there, and I can tell you that using LiDAR, I was able to find the footprints of these buildings and went out tromping looking for them. I found them. There's just some kind of square depressions in the ground. This glass bottle was about the only real physical evidence that you could find. Now, seeing as we're not in the park, I will just not too critical to know, but I like to use this as a moment. If you find something cool in the park, some piece of archaeology, please leave it, report it, tell us. We go take a look if that's something. And sometimes they just choose to leave it as part of the cultural landscape. But what happened to Panorama? How did this big resort, really a big resort, end up not being preserved? Why Skyland rather than Panorama? Well, there had been some disagreements between the national park and the operators there. There had also been some talk that perhaps those buildings would become the headquarters for Shenandoah National Park. Today it's on a little annex at the bottom of the mountain. There is some thought that they're going to put the headquarters here. Well, in 1935, one of the attractions, along with the horseback riding and putt-putt and all of those things, were these guys, a pair of black bears. Now, these black bears, as you see, they're drinking milk in front of a gaggle of folks. Just, wow, ain't that neat? This is a photo that will get some very good reactions to people when showing them in person. It's a crazy photo. When these bears grow up some, they're kept in a cage, and they're pretty docile for the most part. But there's a story, a man, now the owner of the lodge in the court case says that, well, the man was drunk and he kind of had it coming. He was, according to the owner, harassing the bears. He gets swiped. The bear comes up, swipes, cuts his head open real good, and after that court case and the payout, Panorama is no more. But it still is there in some postcards. Now, speaking of bears and feeding bears, y'all know this. Do we feed the bears? Today, that's another thing that's changed. This is a historic, it's not really all that old. This was from inside the Matthews Arm Campground. The back of the card says Blackie the bear feeding at his favorite picnic table. That's not a picnic table. Today, such things, they are locked up. So Blackie cannot see his picnic table. So this is a way that we can see things have changed. Panorama doesn't exist anymore. But you got to be careful with postcards sometimes. Sometimes postcards will over embellish. They're trying to sell you an idea of a place. There's serpentine curves on Skyline Drive. Skyline Drive is curvy, but nowhere in Shenandoah National Park is there a stone retaining wall like this on Skyline Drive. From about here on is likely all just made up, a way to embellish the card. This really does look like the rise of Hawksbill or Stony Man to me. So perhaps there is a real card or some sort of composite photo going on there, or maybe they just saw it and say, oh, that's iconic for the park. This is kind of made up. Also, we need to get into some issues with printing. I won't stay here for too long. I am fascinated by the printing process, and hopefully by the end of this, you will have it. If you don't know, you'll have a basic understanding. If you don't understand, ask questions at the end. I can probably get you through it, and hopefully I get it all right. I got some folks in here that may be able to school me on these processes. Now, this is what that card should look like. This is could be the colorist being a little extreme or just being offset wrong. Now, how does this postcard come to be? Now, we have here a photographer. Now, this photographer, he's got his camera. He's happy as a lark because he's going out to Shenandoah National Park on assignment from the company. We are going to get some photos of the park. Now, he's going to go take a picture of, say, a flower, and he's going to hand that flower to a colorist. A colorist is going to sit down, color that card. He's going to color a print of his photograph. From there, the colorist is going to present it to a photographer. That photographer has a special camera, and that camera has, it's almost like a window screen in the back. What it does, it transmits for anywhere that's really bright, only, or a lot of light will come through. Anywhere that's dark, very little bit will come through. And that's how you get these uniform pattern, grid pattern of dots, and then anywhere growing or undergrowing. Now, the type of film that they used, it was very high contrast. It's either exposed or not exposed. It's one or the other. Now, where do the colors come in? Well, you get the colors. What he does is you'll put on maybe a green filter. So after your black and white exposure, put on a green filter, and you will rotate that screen a couple degrees, and you'll take another picture. Then take a new slide, and you'll rotate the screen again with a new color. Then do it again. And with those colors, what you end up with is 3 different images with dots that are just ever so slightly spaced apart. I'll show an example of that in a moment. And that's how, when you roll it through really an offset lithography, you end up with the different stages. Now, let me give you an example. So this is a really fun card. I really love the colors that you're going to see in this soon. You might start with the black and white. Grotesque rock formations in Shenandoah National Park. To my knowledge, this is nowhere in Shenandoah National Park. This looks more like West Virginia. Again, be careful with what you believe for parks. If anybody has photos and can show me where this is in Shenandoah, I will stop saying that. But to my knowledge, that is nowhere in Shenandoah. So let's start. So we got black and white. We add the green. The green is offset from the other colors. Now, this one's using a weird color combo: green, yellow, reds, and then blues. Often today, it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I'm actually just going to go back because I think that's a darn cool postcard. More modern postcards, more contemporary postcards, it's the same process, but it is digitally, the dots are added, the rosettes. Y'all are probably familiar with all of that, but it's the same type of process. And this is Dark Hollow Falls, a shorter hike in the park, a little more strenuous, about 400 feet of elevation gain on that one. Also, you can't believe postcards sometimes because this is approaching tunnel through Mary's Rock on Skyline Drive. These rocks kind of look like the rocks that you would find maybe sticking out at Stony Man. The rocks aren't even oriented the right way. So this does look like the parking area for Mary's Rock. There's Mary's Rock Tunnel would be just sort of behind the photographer here, and there is kind of a wide area. This looks like a real car. This doesn't really look like a real car. Those rocks are maybe somewhere in the park, but definitely not here. This guy's heart, it's almost floating over top of the rocks. Trees are very strange. This is a situation where the colorist is really created an image that's not really true to life, and that can happen, in which they can be embellished. And when presenting this to an audience, I will let them stew on this for a minute. Skyland, 3850 feet near Skyland, near Skyline Drive. This is that historic cabin community that was preserved. You can go and stay at today. I will ask people, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this postcard? They'll stew and look. Really, the roofs probably weren't all blue. It was just a way for them to show, but that's not what I'm getting at. This is actually on the back of the postcard, at the summit of the highest mountain in the state of Virginia. In the most picturesque portion of the Blue Ridge on the famous Skyline Drive is located Skyland, just 9 miles east of the town of Luray. No resort in the eastern United States can boast of more beautiful scenic surroundings than Skyland, situated as it is on top of a lofty mountain, with seas of undulating mountain peaks stretching out as far as the eye can reach. Now, that may be a pretty good ad for Shenandoah National Park. We do have beautiful mountains going out into the distance. We are pretty close to Luray, an eastern resort, more beautiful scenic surroundings, at least maybe it's up to taste. But here, at the summit of the highest mountain in the state of Virginia, Skyland, Stony Man aren't even the highest peak in Shenandoah National Park. Hawksbill is higher even than Skyland, is short of being the highest elevation in Virginia by about 1,200 feet. That's Mount Rogers. That's about a mile above sea level down near where I'm from. So you can't always believe them. With all of that said, sometimes you can still use these as tools to see how things have changed. I'm now getting into that side of stuff. Right there is Stony Man. Named so because if you look at the profile, and I've got a coworker this year who has a rather large beard. I haven't met him yet. The resemblance, you can really see it if the beard is larger, but you get in profile a forehead, nose, and a beard. Forehead, nose. This hasn't changed that much. The cars have changed. The rocks are a little more overgrown, but if you go there, you'll probably see the same thing. Now, this is a story that I've got to pack into just about any program I do. It's one of those things I find it very important for us to remember. If you visit Shenandoah National Park, you are likely to see dead trees around. Something like this. Recently, that has been the spongy moth causing oak die-offs and issues with oaks. In the time of the postcards, these were chestnut trees. Now, if you don't know the story of the American chestnut, because I can't hear y'all, I'm just going to assume that you're ready to hear the story. The American chestnut was a real titan of the forests, really before about 1900. There was a blight that struck, and by 1940, that blight had swept through and killed every American chestnut in the country. Now, they're working on bringing them back today. There's a lot of animals that thrived and really made their living off these chestnuts. And it's something that maybe one day I or youngins around might live long enough to see them come up with a good cure or a fix to get the chestnuts back in our forests. Same thing, same experience there. Mary's Rock Tunnel on Skyline Drive, really hasn't changed that much. That rock face, that's still right there. People still drive through it. Mary's Rock in this area was a quarry. A lot of if you may be familiar with the stone walls along Skyline Drive, a lot of the stones for this section of the park were quarried out of this area. Now, another man, Stony Man. and Skyline Drive from Pinnacle Parking Overlook. They added this here. I think that's just an embellishment. I've looked around to see if perhaps there was some sort of fire road or something. It's definitely not Skyline Drive. Hey, hasn't changed that much. Now, this is one that you can tell. Now, again, this was a black and white photo at first, but they probably got the color right that back the time this photo was taken, these parts would have been way more visible than they are today. But they are still there. It's not cutting necessarily a tunnel right here, but there are trees kind of hiding the road cut. But in here, it can be seen. And to get this photo, I climbed into a patch of sumac, got 3 ticks on me this day, and gosh darn it, it was just downright difficult. You may see all these little specks, gnats. This was not a pleasant day. I hope you all appreciate the effort that I went through to do this. Now, another lodge that you can stay at within Shenandoah National Park, this is Big Meadows Lodge. Not changed too much. And it's really cool that you can see that, especially on top of the mountain trees, it's harsh conditions up there. Trees don't often grow very fast. These trees can be very old, especially you can watch this one just get bigger. Some that don't make it, new ones sprouting up. And that change with the trash cans. So come to the park and enjoy that. Now, this is one that I will one day get this photo. I had a chance to do it one night and it probably would have been perfect, but I was really tired and I just didn't take the photo. I was kind of lazy. Moonlight scene over the Shenandoah Valley. This could be seen in the park. I just think this is a really pretty postcard that I couldn't find any other way to share than showing it here. This is another one. This would be easy to recreate. I just need to get out and take the photo. There's that face of Stony Man. He is much more obscured by trees today. And up here, you got some of the cliffs for Little Stony Man. Not too bad a hike to get up from the parking area around the corner here to up there. And then you can eventually wrap all the way around. Again, any hiking questions, feel free to ask. Now, we have only covered half of each of these postcards. Remember, these postcards have got 2 sides, right? They've got a front and a back. Now, some folks, they like to collect postcards without anything sent on them, in really good shape. I actually kind of like an ugly postcard that's been through some stuff and maybe has a message on the back. So let's snoop and see what people were talking about back in the day. This is from June 15th, 1951. Now, hi, Pap-Up. Went over Skyline Drive yesterday. Stayed all night in a cabin near Harrisonburg. Started today doing it. Oh man, I can't remember what that one says. In an overlook for breakfast in Harrisonburg. Big story here. They were having breakfast. They might not have been having breakfast in the park, but they had breakfast and they were going to some overlooks. This is another kind of cool one that there's a set that looks like this. It's an early photo. Phew! Looked over a cabin, stopped in Virginia for the night in a lodge on top of the Blue Ridge. M is eating lunch. Thanks again for being so good. So somebody's having lunch and staying probably in Skyland back in 1946. I like this one. So this is somewhere in the South District. What a bunch of text. Dear Tracy, I am writing to you because of that chain letter. My name is Betty S. And I live in Coopersburg, Pennsylvania. I really thought that chain letter was neat. Except your arm gets tiring. I don't know what else to say besides, what are you supposed to say to someone you don't even know? By me, P.S. I hope you get all 50 of your postcards. It was sent to Tracy. And we got this lovely little by bird here. A wild thing happened on the last night that I gave this talk in the park last summer. Someone that knew Betty S. She said, "Wait, I'm from Coopersburg. I was around in 1979. Betty S." And she came up and asked me after the program, you have that hidden. Yeah, because they're probably still alive and I don't want to give out that name. I told her the name and she said, "That's a friend of hers." So that was an absolutely incredible luck of the draw. Friend knowing. I like this card just in general. I don't think this building exists. It's one of the Skyland historic buildings. I want to say this one was likely torn down, covered in snow. Incredible picture. All right. Thanks for your card. I wonder if you could get me a state capital and a state souvenir pillow top. Tell me what you want in exchange. Tell me your hobbies. Love, Myrtle Morris. So Myrtle's over here asking for some pillow tops from somebody on their visit. If you were to look in the exhibits at Shenandoah in Big Meadows, in the Lewis Mountain exhibit, there is a state capital of Virginia pillow top on display in there. It was a big thing in 1947. Hey, Blackie the Black Bear again. Let's turn that one over. Colleen, free bowls. I've looked for this magazine. There is someone selling a copy online for quite a bit. I haven't found it in any libraries. I want to know what ad they were responding to, but I assume Colleen got free bowls looking at an ad from Women's Day magazine back in 1981. We can hope that she got her free bowls. Hey, another view of the tunnel, an older view of the tunnel. This is when things are still pretty rough and a much older car in the tunnel. Pencil back in 55. Hi, folks. We are okay. We went through 9 of these tunnels Wednesday. This is one for Ripley. One night we went to bed at 7 p.m. Sun was still shining. Now, given 9 of the tunnels, and this was set in Asheville in 1955, they likely went through the early Blue Ridge Parkway and got to go through many of the tunnels on that. One for Ripley. They might have had a family member named Ripley, but also in 55, Ripley's, believe it or not, was a big thing, and they had a television show. So perhaps that, and traveling by car in 1955 was tiring. Even today is tiring. Doubly so then, so going to bed at 7, they were probably poop. They had a good time. Hey, this one again. This is one of my favorites. October 7th, 1941. Went over this today. It certainly is hot. Hope we won the election. I don't know what election they're talking about. I'm thinking it's some sort of local Connecticut thing because I looked for federal and there wasn't anything really in October of 41, but it was hot. It was proper hot in 41. It was 92 degrees that day when they visited in October. It is very abnormal. If you visit in the fall, usually it's lovely. Lots of people, but the fall colors can be really nice. I should have included it tonight. I picked up one not too long ago, sort of extolling the virtues of coming to the park, when to come for the best fall colors. Sent back in 1941. All right, hey, this thing again, with the kind of messed up people and cars and made up lots of stuff. Here's the card I promised you. Having a good time. Now, when I give this is back in 41. When I give this presentation in the park, I've got the audience there, and I can ask them, have you done this, 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 and this? Because they visited. But for y'all, because you're not in the park at the moment, perhaps you could see this as an invitation to come have breakfast, come have lunch, come ride over the Blue Ridge Mountains, come and ride through a tunnel, come to the national park and buy a souvenir pillow top or postcard or whatever they sell in the gift shops these days. Ideally, you have a good time because that's what we're here for. Really, the national parks exist for you, American people. We're here to help you to enjoy these places. You see them, we're here to keep them safe for you. These experiences that folks had 100 years ago, 70 years ago, 50 years ago are some of the same experiences you can have if you come to the park today. Old Rag, this mountain here, is still there. It hasn't changed that much. So with that, I reckon I am wrapped up, and I hit, what, about the 30-minute mark or something like that? That's it. Thanks for coming. Got any questions?
Thank you, Dylan.
Hey.
It was an interesting, definitely we want to go to the park. So we don't have that many. Okay, there is one. The free bowl were a set of bowls offered by Gerber Fruit Juice for infants. The ad likely appeared in multiple magazines, but the card in the collection sent to the same address in Michigan was in response to an ad in Family Circle, December 16, 1980. I can send a copy of the ads.
I would
Says
love a
Tom.
copy of that ad. Yes, I would absolutely love a copy of that ad. And please, I know it was, I've seen that same postcard. Doing some looking. If you search online, you can find similar back saying women, or they don't all say Women's Day, but they all say free bowls. I've seen another, maybe it was Family Circle, but it seems that Women's Day ran the same ad. Thank you. I would love to see that.
So, Fred.
Yes. Have you ever discovered collecting real photograph postcards? I know you said most of what you showed are very modern and they're chrome or linen cards. I guess you said you started very recently. Is that correct? Mm-hmm.
Yes. I have a couple, and I don't know if Miss Gail Floyd is in here. They are gifts from her. I have a couple of real photos. I have no location data on them, but should some photos of Shenandoah National Park, real photos, show up, I would probably look to pick those up. There is one thing that I can say, that there is a lodge in the park that is much older even than the lodges that I talked about, Black Rock Lodge. To my knowledge, the only photo that we have of that place is an old real photo postcard. It's in the archives and the collections at Shenandoah. So,
all
yes.
right, let's try in the order.
Even if y'all have comments, if there was something that I messed up in the research and got something a little, hey, could you make this more clear? Please add. This is a good.
All right, and so
I'm usually presenting this in front of people who have no clue. This is a totally new world to them.
All right, so then Jerry.
I do have a question. I was wondering if the emerald ash borer has reached the park yet.
Yes. Emerald ash borer ash is not as big of a forest constituent than the oak trees are. Mm-hmm. So when the ash borer hit the park, when you're looking out, you will see dead standing. You would know, oh, that's ash borer damage. The oaks are much more prevalent in the park, so the spongy moth has been a bigger issue.
Jerry.
I just wanted to compliment you on your older and your current version. You did a great job of capturing that. I'm doing something similar locally here with my urban cards, and you did a super job on that. So
well, thank you.
Get close to home.
All right.
I think you've probably turned a couple of people who've heard your talk into card collectors.
I hope so.
It was a wonderful talk.
It's often been that people will come up, oh, I've got a shoebox of my grandpa's cards. I'm going to have to start looking through those. That's usually the folks that I think you might get a bit of the carditis.
Yes.
Thanks very much. This has been very, very interesting. I worked for 4 summers in Rocky Mountain National Park just outside of Estes Park, and I worked at a gift shop. So sold lots of postcards there. But
awesome.
anyway, it was a wonderful experience and something I'll always remember. Thank you again.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No,
I just wanted to introduce myself.
Sure, go for it.
I'm Dan Hennelly from the Hampton Roads Postcard Club. I'm currently the president, and I think this is the first time we've participated in one of these meetups. I was just noticing something on the back of one of the postcards that our speaker had tonight. It was a name that the postcard was published by an A.J. Simon Petrie Front Royal, Virginia. I went to college with somebody whose last name was Simon Petrie from that part of Virginia. I almost wonder if he was part of that postcard publishing family. I didn't know anything about his background. It just is such an unusual name.
If they're from that region, I did consider going through and really trying to dig deep. I had to dig deep enough for some of the other details that I have. A lot of them come from either this Front Royal Simon Petrie, or there's another, the one in Asheville, Frederick, Maryland, and then there's an Asheville one. There's
the Asheville News Agency does a lot of postcards in North Carolina, and particularly in the Blue Ridge Parkway and all.
All right. Well, then I thank Dylan very much for this presentation, which actually, personally, I like the fact that we use more modern postcards sometimes, because we all focus on having only the very old 1900 postcards. And then we forget that there is a whole new, all extra postcard that were published after that. So it's kind of nice to see people collecting the rest of the postcards.
That was also very nice how you showed how the scene had changed when you updated, almost superimposed a more contemporary card over an older one, and how the landscape, how everything slowly starts to close in on what we've built. The walls disappear, the roads get a little more narrow, and that was very nice.
Now your challenge, instead of having pictures, is to find the postcard that were taken maybe early. But the park was started in 1930, right? Is that correct? Did I get it right?
So I am very much on Tuskegee Airmen dates. You could say it's really developed to open by around 33, 34 with the CCC. It's purchased and authorized by Congress in the Coolidge administration. A lot of the land is purchased by the Hoover administration, but it's not until 33 with the CCC that the place is really built and open to the public in the way that we would recognize it today.
So therefore, collecting postcards of the 1900s of the Shenandoah National Park is probably nothing.
You would not see Shenandoah National Park. You
Right.
would see something with like Shenandoah Valley, or
Maybe.
I'm actually not sure what term they would have used for the mountain.
Because some of those
Shenandoah.
areas were actually populated. There were people farming and living there. There's a lot of
Yes.
people that have been expelled from it.
Yes.
When they were
And people that it's something that, much like the rest of the nation, around that turn of the century when factories and things are opening in cities, there's a great depopulation from rural areas. That happened doubly so. The park, for the number of people that were living there, lost something like 80% of its inhabitants, the land of the park. Then the park shows up and starts to purchase lands.
I have another question to add to this. The Skyline Drive was actually created by blasting out a road through the mountains. Is that correct?
In places, yes, is black. In some areas, it kind of sits on ridges, is sitting on places that they could just kind of plop a road on it. But in many places, especially in the central area, they blasted to make it.
This is sort of like an extension of Blue Ridge Parkway, which connected to the Smoky Mountains.
We would like to consider that Blue Ridge Parkway is more of an extension of Skyline Drive.
Well, they all
But yes.
it's interconnected.
Yes. If one driving south from inside Shenandoah National Park, exiting the park, when you hit Blue Ridge Parkway, if you closed your eyes to miss the sign, you might not know that you just are in a totally different unit. It really is interconnected in that way.
Because I know at one point somebody actually down in the Carolinas printed or actually produced real photos of some of the Smokies and Parkway in that southern section in the Asheville area. It's if someday you may decide you want to collect that whole chain, build your collection and
Tell you what, if I end up working in Blue Ridge Parkway, I probably will.
Well, you can do it now, unless you think you can get every hands around it. Because at some point, I think you have to start going back to the real early ones, and the ones video. Because you showed something from Paris, but is that one you own or just when you copied from somewhere?
That is actually, I want to say, if I remember right, it's from a museum, the oldest, and it was freely available to use for the public. It's in the public domain, so I could use that picture.
Because personally, I got my hands around in 1891 was the 600th anniversary of the founding of a Swiss Confederation.
Yeah.
So that was actually produced in 1891 and eventually got mailed to USA in April of 1893, which was before the Columbian Expedition cards were being sold. Is a very fascinating story that the card had a bit of a chip on it. It's so old and so rare, I think.
I can share, I can